a nonpartisan political organization. For over 100 years, we have encouraged informed and an active participation in government and influenced public policy through education and advocacy. To remain nonpartisan, the League never supports or opposes political candidates or parties. We are pleased tonight to have as our Spanish language interpreters Rosabel Rice and Kelly Music. Now to the forum. The Colorado Senate is the upper house of the Colorado General Assembly and is composed of 35 members elected from single-member districts, with each district having a population of about 144,000 people. A senator is elected to a 4-year term and is term limited to serving 2 consecutive terms. The legislative session begins no later than the second Wednesday in January and lasts up to 120 calendar days. The format for tonight's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. We will then ask the candidates as many questions as time permits. Questions have been reviewed by our League of Women Voter Volunteer Screeners and will be addressed to both candidates. We will share questions not asked with the candidates. For most questions, each candidate will have up to 1 minute. However, I may expand the time to answer depending on the question. I will announce if the time has been increased from 1 minute. Our timekeeper, Holly Marksman, will help you stay on track. We will finish with 1 minute closing statements. Tonight's forum participants include in ballot order Rob Woodward, Republican, and Janice Marksman, Democrat. And I'm going to take a pause here.
Pardon me, interpreter Kelly Music, Spanish interpreter. I am not in the interpretation channel, so I cannot actually be relaying this. I also was not let in until about 3 seconds ago, so I did not hear the entire thing. I apologize because I can't interpret into Spanish, which I did not hear. I apologize, Stacy.
Okay, did you catch that, Anna?
Yeah, I think she just wants you to repeat asking her to give the instructions again, maybe.
Thank you.
Okay, my apologies. Okay, I'll just review this one more time. Welcome to the State Senate District 15 Candidate Forum, sponsored by the League of Women Voters, Boulder County. My name is Stacy Johnson, and I'm a proud member of the League, and I'm pleased to serve as moderator for tonight's forum.
Bienvenido a lo que es la Liga de Mujeres Votantes en Condado de Boulder, lo que es el foro para los candidatos para el Distrito 15. Tengo mucho gusto de poder ser la anfitriona y la que voy a ser la voz principal, Stacy Johnson, para este foro esta noche.
The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. For over 100 years, we have encouraged informed and active participation in government.
Por más de 100 años, la Liga de Mujeres I'm sorry, and Stacy, you need to just in order for me, since I'm not reading it, I need to have you just stop. Entonces, soy parte de lo que es la Liga de Votantes Mujeres. Durante cientos de años hemos estado así navegando lo que es la participación de los votantes del condado de Boulder. Continue, thank you.
To remain nonpartisan, the League never supports or opposes political candidates or parties.
Okay.
I believe Rosabel is actually interpreting in the platform, and I was not added. I apologize for the glitch. If you would just add me in the platform with Rosabel, I will stop interrupting Stacy and let you continue. Thank you so very much.
Okay, and just to make sure, are both Rosabelle and Kelly now added?
We're fine.
Roosevelt,
We're fine right now. I'll let you.
Kelly is not in the interpreter room. Roosevelt is, and I believe she's interpreting what you have to say, Ms. Johnson. Thank you.
Okay. And my apologies, I'm going to just repeat this one paragraph I have here just to make sure our Spanish speakers have that. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. For over 100 years, we have encouraged informed and active participation in government and influenced public policy through education and advocacy. To remain nonpartisan, the League never supports or opposes political candidates or parties. We are pleased tonight to have our Spanish language interpreters, Rosabelle Rice and Kelly Music. Now to the forum. The Colorado Senate is the upper house of the Colorado General Assembly and is composed of 35 members elected from single
de 35 miembros de varios distritos, con cada distrito tiene una población de 144,000 personas. Un senador se elige para un plazo de 4 años y limitados a 2 plazos consecutivos. La sesión consecutiva no comienza no más tarde que el segundo miércoles de enero y dura 100 años calendarios. El foro de hoy noche será lo siguiente: cada candidato tendrá 1 minuto para la declaración de aperturas y luego le haremos las preguntas como podamos. Y han sido repasados para los voluntarios de las mujeres votantes y serán dirigidos a los candidatos. Las preguntas que no se han hecho con los candidatos. Cada candidato tendrá casi 1 minuto. Puedo ampliar el tiempo para responder las preguntas dependiendo de la pregunta que se les hiciera. Voy a anunciar que el tiempo ha sido aumentado de 1 minuto. Colleen Marksman nos va a ayudar a mantener eso a tiempo y el foro de hoy en orden de la balota, Rob Woodward y Janice Marksman, la demócrata. Así que la declaración de apertura y preguntas. Y cuando hay faltan 15 minutos.
If you are mid-sentence when your time is up, please promptly finish that sentence so we can move on to the next candidate. For the opening statements, we will begin with candidate Woodward.
Good evening. My name is Rob Woodward. I have been the state senator for Senate District 15 for the last 4 years. I was elected in 2018. At that point, Senate District 15 was most of Larimer County. Redistricting, of course, every 10 years with a census gave me the gift of getting to know folks in Boulder County, particularly the western third, really west of Boulder, is where most of the area lies. I came to Colorado to go to Colorado State University. I pursued a degree in finance. I met my wife. We pursued master's degrees. I started a small business and have remained mostly in Colorado for the 32, 34 years since that, where I've raised my family. I have been honored to serve as the state senator for Senate District with my cohorts on both sides of the aisle. This past year was particularly fruitful as we passed 35 different pieces of legislation where I was the prime sponsor along with a Democrat co-sponsor.
Candidate Marksman, your opening statement.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Janice Marksman. I've raised my family with my husband, Mike, in Larimer County for 18 years. We've got 2 older teens, a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old. It was community service that first led me to politics. I served on, was elected to be the vice president of my local school board here in Loveland. It's called Thompson. I'm also a trained systems engineer and an experienced supply chain manager. But 6 years ago, I finally found my my calling, my passion, and it's teaching. I'm a middle school math teacher. I teach 6th and 7th graders math and how to do math. I love to watch my students grow, and I love to connect with their families. And that's really what compels me to run this year, is those middle class families. We want to not just scrape by paycheck to paycheck. We want to get ahead. I know we can do better. So I want to represent your agenda, not mine. It's time we take working class values and common sense to the Senate from Loveland. I'd be honored to earn your vote.
For the first question, we will start with candidate Marksman. How can the legislature help families and seniors who are struggling economically without worsening inflation? Candidate Marksman.
Thank you for the question. One of the big reasons I'm running is I look around and the majority of my neighbors are retired older Americans and on a fixed income. And as inflation is getting worse, things are hard. So older adults are a huge focus of why I'm running. I think there are a couple areas I'm going to focus on the most to try to improve life for older adults. One is for healthcare. I really want to make sure that we can limit the cost of prescription drugs and make healthcare more accessible to folks, especially older adults. The other piece of it is affordable housing. We have a lot of people who are aging out of their mortgage-free homes who need a place to go that's affordable, that they can get care, access to transportation, and stay in their communities. And so those are two components I'd like to focus on: healthcare and affordable housing for older Americans. Thank you.
Candidate Woodward, the question is again, how can the legislature help families and seniors who are struggling economically without worsening inflation? Candidate Woodward.
Thank you. And really, as I knock on doors, that's the most popular question. That's really that matters most to working families that are out there, and seniors. So as you know, most folks, many seniors are on fixed incomes. Social Security has been flat. At the same time, we've seen inflation go through the roof, somewhere between 8 and 15%. At the same time, property taxes are going through the roof, utilities are going through the roof. Some ideas, some examples of things that I have done is tried to pass a property tax exemption expansion. So seniors today get a property tax exemption on the first 100,000 of their home, but they're locked into that home. They can't move or they lose it. So what I tried to do is both double the expansion, and number two is allow them to move. The second thing for working families, I mean, we need to attract primary employers so that we can raise wages. And then finally, number three, hopefully we get to talk about costs. Taxes and fees are going through the roof, and there's some bad policies coming from both the federal level and the state legislature the last couple of years that we need to reverse and address.
Okay, for our second question, and for this next question, we will begin with candidate Woodward. Mountain community members often lack access to basic needs services as other less rural Front Range communities. What might you do to help address these issues to ensure rural communities are well served? Candidate Woodward.
Thanks. Well, let's talk about some of the things that I've been hearing and things that I've done. So over the last 4 years, I've done a lot around broadband. I have worked with the state legislature and bringing federal dollars to make sure the folks up in Estes Park, after the flood and fires, we realized that we had a faulty system that was not looped. So we lost internet, plus we had slow internet. So we've been able to bring high-speed internet up there. And I've been leading the way on that. Other services that they're lacking. So I worked with Senator Joanne Janal. She's a Democrat from Fort Collins. Together, she and I fought to try to keep the nursing home at the Estes Park Hospital afloat. Tried to keep them alive, because otherwise folks in that nursing home will have to move down to the valley before they are able to get services. Unfortunately, the ship had sailed, because we've set some things in motion at the legislature that makes it really tough for a small nursing home to stay in business. Of course, fires are number one on folks' mind, and making sure we get insurance to cover those fires is top of mind as well.
Okay, candidate Marchman.
Okay, great. So ways to help people in the rural areas. That's really the majority of our Senate district, our rural communities. And it's been great to get to meet all of the people in the rural communities as well as understand their needs. I will say again, healthcare is huge. The fact that we don't have doctors, dentists, regular providers in our mountain communities is a problem. I was excited to be at the Clinica opening of it's an affordable clinic in Netherland. They've got a Gilpin County one. It would be great to continue that. I think we also need to make sure that we have access and remove all obstacles so that we can get the rural broadband to these communities. They need it so badly. I will say too, wildfires is huge. We have to protect against those, and water sourcing is something that's tremendous. And I hope we have a chance to talk about it later, but it's another huge need in mountain communities.
Okay, for our third question, we will begin with candidate Marchman. What lessons learned from recent wildfires would you apply to policies for wildfire prevention, evacuation, and services? Candidate Marchman.
Thank you for that question. It's a sad reality that we live in a year-round wildfire season in Colorado. That is the reality of climate change, and so it's a huge problem. So first and foremost, and kind of the broad picture, is we have to continue our very focused attention on improving our climate change so that we can prevent wildfires and the flooding that comes from burn scars. In addition to that, we're going to have to fund in multiple levels, and we've got regional equipment now, statewide equipment, but we need to fund at all the different levels wildfire help so that we can support our firefighters, volunteer, and otherwise. And then the other piece of it is we have to insure our properties. That's the biggest thing I'm interested in. We have people who are underinsured and not insured in wildfire areas, and we have to hold the insurance companies accountable for that. Thank you.
Candidate Woodward.
Hi, thanks. So as far as wildfires go, it's funny you should ask. Today I spent the day essentially doing mitigation of dead trees up in the mountains. And those dead trees, as a result of beetle kill and other things that we've had over the last couple of decades, have really left us susceptible to those wildfires. The very first bill that I ran when I got to the Capitol was an effort to try to push into federal and state lands to let private homeowners go in and mitigate, essentially remove some of the dead timber that ultimately burned up many of the houses in Boulder County and in Larimer County through the fires we've seen. I've been a huge supporter of wildfires this past week. As you know, the legislature meets year round. Leg Council met this week and we approved 5 bills around wildfire from the Wildfire Committee. We've funded helicopters and Black Hawk helicopters that are going to help us fight fires in the near future. Evacuation using helicopters and making sure we have those roads and bridges in great shape. We're getting closer and closer to that as well.
Okay, for our next question, we will begin with candidate Woodward. What do you propose as a solution to rising energy costs in Colorado? Candidate Woodward.
So I think we all know that we've seen gasoline prices double at the pump over the last couple of years. They were even higher a few months ago. They've dropped a little bit, but all of a sudden they've been climbing back up. I don't think most people realize that the PUC just approved a 54% increase on your home heating bill this winter. Prices are going to go up and they're going to continue to go up. If you look at the forecast supply coming out of the wells that are in the ground today, we don't have enough oil and gas coming out of the ground to meet our needs. We don't have enough windmills and solar to meet our needs. So that means we are offshoring all of our production, all of our new production really to meet that difference. So, what do we propose to lower the cost of energy? Certainly, we can roll back some of the fees and taxes that are an extra burden today. We can work closely to make sure that we come up with technologies that allow every industry to thrive. The bill that I ran this past year around geothermal energy was the only bill that passed. Republican sponsored it, and Governor Polis has been taking that across the country because Colorado is really leading the way in geothermal.
Candidate Marksman.
And I'll say that that's why it's so important to elect me, to continue moving forward in that direction. Everything's expensive for working families. We have to make sure we take care of our workers as we make this transition. We have leading climate targets across the country because we have a Democratic majority in the state House and in the state Senate. And it is because of that that we're able to move forward. So we're at a point where we're going to have 80% renewable by 2030. We need to definitely get to a place where we have a cleaner air and water. We also need to be able to, our new buildings are doing well, but we need to make it cheaper for older homes to be able to be retrofitted for energy efficiency. But now is the time for us to focus on moving forward in our climate work rather than stepping on the brakes.
Okay, for the next question, we will begin with candidate Marksman. How do you feel about the legislators' continued use of fees to increase state revenue? Candidate Marksman.
Thank you for the question. So there are a lot of fees, and I do believe that people think that those exist in lieu of taxes. And I don't believe that is always true. And so what I'll say is it's important to us that we honor what we have in our laws. And we do have Tabor. Tabor does exist. It's the taxpayers' Bill of Rights. And it means that taxes have to go through our voters before they come to count. So that said, Tabor's not perfect. I'd love to see parts of it reformed to unleash some of what we have to put into some of our infrastructure like schools and jails. But as it is now, I feel like we have Tabor in place for a reason. And so that's kind of where we have to stay.
Candidate Woodward.
Well, let me tell you a little secret from the Capitol, and it's the secret that I think that most people don't want you to know about, and that is the fact that the people of Colorado several years ago passed Tabor back in the 90s. Tabor limits the amount of taxes that we can raise, the revenues that we can raise as a state. If we want to increase taxes, we have to go ask voters to increase those taxes. So what the legislature has done over the last 10 or 20 years is we've done a workaround. Instead of asking the voters for permission to raise those taxes, we've simply figured out a ways to start charging fees on anything and everything. So a couple of years ago, a group got together and said, you know what, legislature, you're not honoring what you said you would do. So we're going to put some handcuffs around you so that you can still do some fees for some good small things, but you can't keep charging fees and fees and fees. So what does the legislature do? We found, and I should say the folks who led the way found ways to pass fees that meet the technicality of that last legislation, but in reality raise the cost of taxes and fees to the people of Colorado.
Okay, for the next question, we will begin with candidate Woodward. What are your thoughts about secure elections and voter accessibility in Colorado? And how can the legislature make improvements? Candidate Woodward.
Thanks. I think Colorado does a pretty darn good job. We led the way in mail-in ballots, 15, 20 years ago. And I was excited to see mail-in ballots start to roll in. And I think that we put some good things in place. We really led the way in the country on how that might work. The good thing about that is it increased the number of people who were participating in our elections. And I think that's a great thing. It became more convenient, not only for people not having to take time off work, they wouldn't forget about it at the last minute. And it really gives a chance for families to sit down and talk over the issues across the kitchen table, husband, wife, friends, kids, really discussing those issues. I do think that there are things that we can do better. My county clerk came to me with a suggestion with an area where she thought there was a potential for fraud. So I thought, well, let's go to the state capitol and see if we can plug this one tiny little hole. I was sad that it didn't pass, because I think all of us want to pursue secure elections and make sure that we do a great job going forward so that there's trust within our election system.
Candidate Marksman.
Yeah, I will always fight to protect free and fair Colorado elections. And I do believe that we are the gold standard in elections nationwide. We have the second highest turnout of any other state in our country. So we do a really good job of making sure that our eligible voters are able to vote and access ballot boxes in a number of ways. I also think we need to protect our election workers, the volunteers, as well as those who are paid. I do know too that while nothing is perfect, we do have safeguards in place that ensure that only eligible votes count here in Colorado. I'll mention that my opponent did vote against keeping our polling places weapon-free. Thankfully, that did pass. And he did vote against automatic voter registration. I'll always protect our democratic process in Colorado.
For the next question, we will begin with candidate Marksman. As a state senator, how will you support small business owners, particularly in this recovery period from the COVID-19 pandemic? Candidate Marksman.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So small businesses are really the entrepreneurs in our community. They're the ones who bring us our products and our services. They employ a number of people in our communities. And I think it's really important that we make it easy and affordable for these entrepreneurs to get going in business here in Colorado. I'll always support measures that are going to take obstacles away from small business owners so that they can succeed. I will do what I can to make sure that we support all kinds of new types of innovation in Colorado. We're really innovative in Colorado, but I also stand for strong worker protections. I believe that we need to very much make sure our employers are providing a workplace that is going to let our working families live well. Thank you.
Candidate Woodward.
Thanks. So I have been nominated and endorsed by National Federation of Independent Business, Chamber of Commerce, small business federations. And the reason is I am the loudest voice at the state capitol to make sure that small business owners can start new small businesses, can stay in business, and really have a voice at the capitol when it comes to some of the complicated things around, taxes and law. About a week ago, Democrat former rep, now mayor, Jenny Arndt from Fort Collins, joined me in moderating a small business forum down in Loveland. What we heard over and over again from the people who attended that was that they're in a tough situation right now. COVID was rough on them. Those that did survive are barely hanging on today. Between workforce shortages, regulations, taxes, we're going to lose our small business if we're not careful to make sure that we stand up and protect them. What we've seen over the last few years is an onslaught of regulations that are really killing small business, and we need to do something about that.
For the next question, we will begin with candidate Woodward. What are your thoughts about the oil and gas industry, as well as the renewable energy industry? Candidate Woodward.
Thanks. So let's start big picture. So it takes energy to make our world go around. Our standard of living, everything that we do, whether it's, the things that you're holding right now for manufacturing, to heat our homes, to light our lights, to move our cars, all take energy. So we have a broad selection of energy choices today, everything from oil and gas on one hand, to the other end, there's things like fossil or solar and wind. And I think that we've done a good job in Colorado by creating a balanced approach. We have the cleanest oil and gas molecule in the entire world. The oil and gas that we produce here is cleaner than any place else on the planet. But also we're leading the way through the work at CSU and CU on solar and wind. But when it comes down to it, I'm not convinced that either of those is completely clean, affordable, and reliable. So that's one of the reasons why I went in and passed this geothermal energy bill. The two energy bills that I passed last year, both renewable, both received bipartisan support, nearly unanimous support in the legislature.
Candidate Marchman.
Yeah, again, I'm going to say that one vote is not the reason that I am running for this office against our incumbent. I'm running because of the 4 years of voting that happened before that one vote. So I will say our oil and gas industry is critical to Colorado, and it's critical to our country. That said, we have made a commitment as a state. We have prioritized the fact that oil and gas is a fossil fuel. It's finite. So we need to figure out how we are going to make a just transition into renewable energy sources. We've said we'll do it by 2030. There are a lot of workers that need some extra help and transition as we do make these transitions. So yeah, thank you.
For the next question, we will start with candidate Marchman. What steps, if any, would you support in the legislature to curb gun violence? Candidate Marchman.
So thank you for the question. I'm a strong proponent of the Second Amendment. I have a lot of friends in Colorado and in Larimer and Boulder counties who are responsible gun owners. They're hunters. That happens. That said, I am a mother and a teacher, and I can tell you that of kids aged 1 through 19, gun violence is the leading cause of death, and that needs our attention. We are the adults. We are the ones who are in charge of protecting people. So of course I support common sense measures like universal background checks and safe storage of guns, and those types of things that my opponent has voted against. But I'll tell you too, as a teacher, I don't think lockdown drills do much good at all. There's no data to prove it does. And as a parent, we are tired of sending our kids to school, not sure who's going to get their hands on a gun. Thank you.
Candidate Woodward.
Well, thanks. This is a very timely question. Most people that get the Denver Post may understand that Colorado is now number 1 or number 2 in gun violence and murders. The reason is because we have a revolving door in our courtrooms. We have DAs and judges who continually release violent criminals back onto the streets. So crime is really the second most popular question when I ask folks what matters to them most in this election. And when the truth comes out, the soft on crime approach that this legislature has operated on for the last couple of years has released violent criminals left and right. Now, certainly some of the things that we can take a look at is as far as gun control and that kind of thing. Most of the deaths that are occurring are happening with illegal guns that are bought illegally. And I think that we can do a better job with DAs and judges making sure that we put those folks behind bars before they kill someone.
For the next question, we will begin with candidate Woodward. Do you support fully funding education by eliminating the budget stabilization factor to ensure teachers are fully funded and supported? Candidate Woodward.
Thank you. So our schools and our teachers are woefully underfunded. Our teachers are underpaid. The Colorado Senate Republicans put together a proposal to do exactly what you're talking about, to fully fund schools and eliminate the BS factor. We put that as our priority this year. That's why we supported that proposal, and we have supported it over and over again. And you know what? That amendment proposal died on a party line vote. You know, some folks put the money where their mouth is, and to me, that line was clear. Republicans have the backs of teachers trying to make sure that we can hold on to the best teachers that are out there, because they've had a tough go the last couple of years, particularly during COVID. And I think that we owe our teachers better. We owe them the money promised them years ago, and that negative factor, BS factor, continues to be one of those things that the legislature keeps kicking the can down the road. It's time that we fully fund education.
Candidate Marksman.
Thank you for the question. As you know, I'm a teacher, and if elected, I will be the only teacher serving in the state Senate. I really believe that I will bring a vision of what it looks like to actually center students and children into our budget rather than the other things. We are constitutionally mandated in this state to fund education, and yet we do have the budget stabilization factor that needs to go away. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. We have to get rid of the BS factor. But I will say, my opponent was a part of a group on March 12th when COVID broke out that introduced a number of bills that would have basically disassembled public education in Colorado. He is dangerous for public education here in Colorado. Thank you.
For the next question, we will begin with candidate Marksman. What can state legislatures do to help ease the housing affordability crisis? Candidate Marksman.
Thanks for the question. So our population is growing. We're definitely at the forefront of this national housing crisis. I think it's definitely going to get more intense if we don't take drastic action. We do have to get ahead of the curve and be proactive on this, but it's an enormous challenge, and we have to use all the tools, from the one-time transformational federal money to the state money. I'm going to put something in here for Prop 123, which would create an affordable housing ongoing fund, to the cities and counties. We can't build our way out of this, but we have to make it easier to build and dedicate affordable housing in our communities. As much as possible, we need to make it viable to increase density where it makes sense. So Rob voted against funding affordable housing projects, helping folks with low income get a down payment. I will always support efforts to help working families become Colorado homeowners. Thank you.
Candidate Woodward.
Hi, thanks for the question. And because the economy is in shambles, the housing crisis is becoming even worse than it's been the last couple of years. As you know, rents are skyrocketing. Housing prices have been going out of control for the last several years. I was fortunate to serve on the Interim Affordable Housing Transformational Task Force. That was a bipartisan group that was put together, and we spent about a year with the private sector and the folks at the legislature coming together to come up with some ideas on how to spend some federal money and how to really jumpstart affordable housing. What we left with is there's lots of different ways that we can do it, and we all have different sectors that we want to try to help. But what it comes down to is we need to figure out ways to increase supply of housing. So I was proud to sponsor some bills that will provide some more new modular housing. I received an award because of the innovative work that I did with modular housing. At the same time that we're trying to lower the cost of housing, property taxes are going through the roof. That's why I ran the senior homestead property tax exemption bill. And number two, trying to keep the cost of energy down as well in those homes.
Now we're going to approach our closing statements. For the closing statements, I'm going to allow 90-second responses, and we will begin with candidate Woodward. Candidate Woodward, please provide us your closing statement. Candidate Woodward, you're on mute.
There we go. You would think after 2 years, I'd understand how this, remember how to push the mute button. So we've spent the last couple of years dealing with the whole COVID crisis. And what really emerged from that is a number of things that are really hurting the people of Colorado. Primary among those is the economy's in shambles. The economy is in shambles because of all kinds of reasons. Many of those come from the federal government and they're passed down to us, but there are some things that we can do and should do here at the state capitol. Some of the things that we can do. So you may have seen the 27-cent fee that now shows up on every pizza or Amazon package that shows up at your step. That hurts small families. You may have seen that prices are going up when you go to Lowe's or Home Depot or Walmart. The reason is because those shoplifting gangs get together and they take whatever they want out of the stores and we don't prosecute. So I passed a bill this past year that begins to allow prosecution of those folks who then take that merchandise and try to resell it. And then number 3 is our kids. Our kids have paid probably the heaviest price of the folks in Colorado. And it just breaks my heart when I step into schools. I work and volunteer with Thompson School District and also Weld County schools. And when I'm in schools, the students are far behind. They can't read or write at grade level. You see things like depression and suicide, and there's been far too much of that in our state. So what it comes down to is you need to elect a senator that represents a broad set of views, a broad set of constituents who have all kinds of views, and someone who's willing to sit down with folks and be known as someone who can work on a bipartisan basis to make sure that we listen to all sides. It surprised me when I got to the Capitol how little listening happened in those committee hearings. I truly walked into committee hearings not really sure how I was going to vote because I wanted to hear those folks. I'm sorry, I did not see that. Thanks.
Candidate Marksman, your closing statement.
Okay,
90-second response.
So I'm running for office today for the same reasons I ran the first time. I really do believe elected officials can do good things for the people in their communities if they actually listen to those people and then focus on their needs rather than focusing on improving their own wealth and power as an elected official. So the decision you have is important for this race for Boulder County, and it's a very clear difference between my opponent and myself. Mr. Woodward is so eager to keep his power, he's willing to misrepresent his voting record, but it speaks for itself. He has spent 4 years to make our communities less safe, our women have fewer rights, and for his radical supporters over the mainstream. He has voted for abortion bans and jailing doctors. I will bolster the middle class. I will stop this divisive nonsense around social issues. I'm going to represent us all. And I'm ready to get to work for you and the citizens of Colorado. I'm already working with local leaders and constituents to get to work for you. We want to provide affordable healthcare for everyone. We want workers' rights. People deserve to have a good, dignified retirement. And we want to fund public education. There's so much more that unites us than divides us. I'd be honored to earn your vote. Thank you.
On behalf of the League, I would like to thank our candidates not only for their participation in tonight's forum, but also for their participation in the democratic process. Running for office and serving as an elected official is hard work, and we really appreciate your efforts. Thank you to our League candidate forum volunteers, and a huge thank you goes to our 2022 election sponsors: Big Red F Restaurant Group, Christina's Luxuries, Elevations Credit Union, High Plains Bank, Lion Gaddis Attorneys at Law, and Simmons Family Fund. And finally, thanks to the Boulder County voters participating as viewers. It's up to us all to make sure we respect and work to protect our democratic processes. Too many people have struggled to win these rights for us not to use them. It starts with being an informed and active voter. Before signing off, I would like to alert voters that tonight's forum, as well as many others, will be available at the League's website, lwvbc.org, the YouTube channel for the League of Women Voters, Boulder County, and vote411.org. Vote 411 is the League's premier voter information guide, which supplies nonpartisan information on state and local candidates, ballot issues and questions, and much more. Resources available on Vote 411 are available in both English and Spanish. The League of Women Voters of Boulder County works throughout the year to help empower voters and defend democracy. If you want to lend your time and skills to encourage civic engagement for all people in a nonpartisan manner, please join us. All the information you need is at www.lwvbc.org. Thank you to our Spanish interpreters, and thank you all for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.